The last rewatch episode of Survivor Season 1.
Hi, honey.
Ooh.
Hi, everybody.
Ah.
Ooh, do you hear the tropical breeze in the South China Sea?
Ooh.
Welcome to Bye Bitches Podcast. I am Melinda Clark, and I'm here with CG Mirich, my
That's
favorite person on the planet right now. How you doing, honey? How's the Windy City?
Awful.
Yeah, you're doing
I'm
awful.
doing awful.
For a good reason.
I broke my elbow.
Yeah, you kind of...
For those of you who watched Vine, I'm going to make a Vine reference. I'm going to say it. I don't care that you broke your elbow. Mom, you don't get that reference.
No,
It's
I don't.
fine.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I was on a run. You already know this, Mom. I was on a run in good old Northwest Indiana. And I tripped and fell. And for those of you watching this on YouTube, here is my cast. Broken elbow, and here is my massive bruise on the right side of my arm. My pain medicine makes my tummy hurt and messes with my digestion.
Oh, no.
I have not been sleeping well. And I guess it's been fine because I binged Survivor.
Right. Okay.
So that's fine.
Well, I guess, I think all of your injuries, I keep thinking over and over, like, how did you actually fall? Because you managed to fall on both sides of your body. You hurt both sides. So that's kind of hard to do. But not your face. That's really important.
Not my face.
Not your face. Well, here we are. Since we have so many to get to, let's just get into it because we are doing episodes 9, 10, 11, 12, and we're going to touch on that finale. So let's get into it. Episode 9, Old and New Bonds.
Is that the name of the episode?
Yeah, we open with Richard fishing. That is his superpower.
Fishing master.
Yes, it's his superpower, and everybody's really paying attention to the fact that they can't vote him off because he provides a great service. And that is something that I don't know. I think it's really interesting that nobody else was able to manage this. And I just wonder if behind the scenes people weren't. They allowed him to do it, or other people attempted, or
it's hard. Like, remember they showed Sean and Dirk trying to do it, and they can't do it. And I think Sue tries to do it, and she's out there for hours and maybe catches one thing. Maybe that's in a later episode,
right?
But it's hard.
Well,
and
he
a weird natural talent for it.
He comes back with a huge, I think one of the bigger lots of fish and stingray.
It's like 6 rays or something.
Right. And then Rudy's cooking, right? He's got the fire going, but somehow it gets screwed up and it becomes burnt beyond recognition. And I've never seen Richard so angry. He was so angry.
He was hangry.
Hangry.
Like if someone's making me food and they're not making it the way I want and I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Crabby. Hangry.
Well, and
I understand where he's coming from. He wants his food done a certain way. He wants something done his way. He's like, if I can't do it myself, I don't want anyone to do it.
It's one of those things it's not complaining. This is my thing. And I've said this before. It's not complaining if it's a fact. So you get to say it once. This is fucked up. Sorry, we're cussing here. That you screwed up the fire, Rudy.
Mom, you cussed. Watch it.
Watch it. So, but he continues. So that really was complaining. But I guess when you're in a situation, these are mistakes you can't afford when you're on an island.
Yeah. But I don't know. Rudy and Rich, I feel like they had such a bond. They created so quickly that even Rudy messing up Rich's, big catch couldn't make him want to vote him off.
Right.
No,
not at all. I think that was so.
Speaking of food, the reward challenge is the first challenge of the episode, and they win a barbecue lunch and letters from home.
I bet that was one of the ones that they were fighting for. I mean, that was kind of a wild challenge. The ropes course, that's the kind of thing that I would have said, I'm out. I don't think I could ever do these. I could hang out and do pretty well campfire or at home base or whatever you want to call it. But those ropes challenges and things like that. There's so many, I'm sure. I mean, Colleen.
I love ropes courses. You don't like ropes courses?
Well, not that one when you're racing. Colleen's legs were already just eaten and bugs and all kinds of things wrong. But she ended up winning. She did a great job and she came.
Like in elementary school, we'd go to science camps.
Yeah.
And there would be ropes courses and stuff. Oh my God, and you would race your friends. And those were like my favorite things ever.
Well,
Like in fourth and fifth grade when we went to those camps for like 3 nights. Ropes courses.
Well, you actually were pretty, CG, you like to keep up with the boys. You had a very good locomotion, and you could outrun a lot of the boys at some point.
Anyone from elementary school and middle school listening, my mom just called you out.
So, Jenna,
yes, Colleen wins.
Right. And Jenna wanted to win, of course, because she hadn't received the video from her mom. And I have a feeling, that barbecue was probably such a big deal to so many people. But Colleen invited instantly Jenna.
And everyone, the second Jeff was like, invite someone, everyone pointed to Jenna. Everyone was like, take Jenna, because Jeff was like, you're getting letters from home. You could see Kelly, Rich, everyone was like, Jenna. They all pointed to her.
Can I tell you something? I am very triggered by food on camera. My whole life, anytime I see really good food on TV, it's, food porn or whatever, I get hungry. And it doesn't matter where it is. Even though I'm not a survivor or a castaway, those hot dogs look good. Everything looked good, and I'm not even in their situation. So I can only imagine being there. It must have been, the food rewards must be the worst. But, so they were eating hot dogs, but speaking of hot dogs.
What?
Speaking of hot dogs, Richard, it was his 39th birthday, and he was in his birthday suit.
Oh, well... we've already talked about him being naked. He's always naked. I don't think it doesn't faze me anymore. He's naked.
There's something to be said for the fact that, later on I found out that, I think in the reunion, they talked about the fact that there were other people that would be nude from time to time, but Richard, for some reason, they focused on it, or he made a big point of wanting to be in his birthday suit. On his birthday. And some people just love nudity. In fact, but it's still one of those, they love to be nude, but it's still one of those things. I remember, this reminds me of a story really quick. There was a play that your grandma and I, my mom and I went to, a Sam Shepard play. And I remember her telling me in the theater, she's like, in the third act, there's nudity. And I said, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. And I kid you not, by the third act, when the guy actually walks across stage naked, Gma grabbed my leg like, oh, and I was like, you knew it was coming.
You knew that was happening.
But there's something about human psyche that it's still shocking for some reason for some people. Also, she's like, I don't know. It's interesting.
75 almost.
Well, she was younger than that at the time. But I can imagine if you're just sitting there on the log and although he was crossing his legs a lot, but I guess people were complaining.
They never had to blur it. Like whenever he's sitting on the log, it's like tucked.
Yeah. They blurred his butt a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When he's walking. Yeah. But like whenever he's sitting, like he tucks.
I remember.
If you know what I'm saying.
I remember in the 70s that for some reason nudist colonies were a big deal. I don't know that people were, it was kind of a post 60s thing, 70s thing. And anyway, he's right. He's on an island. Anyway, so let's move on from his butt.
But so while they're at the barbecue, that's happening. But then this is the first time Colleen mentions, like, maybe we need to get something together to start picking people off. Right. Like, her and Jenna do start talking about it, and they show it at the barbecue. And it's like Colleen's been against it for so long, but now she's like, okay, well, if I want to win, I have to do something. Let's figure it out. But honestly, at this point, too little, too late. But she's like, let's get something together. We're just going to get picked off. Like, let's go. So.
It's really sweet, actually, that they're just, I don't know, there's something about this brand new idea, not brand new idea, but seeing it still for the first time, knowing of the subsequent seasons, that there's like, hey, it's episode 9. Do you think we should try and stick together? Yeah. I think they know their fate already just because they're getting picked off. They're being pagonged, I guess. But I think it's really sweet that they're trying to do that. So
it's not sweet, it's stupid. Get it together.
Get it together. Okay, so the immunity challenge is I guess we call it Survivor Chess, which I liked it. I thought it was really interesting.
The puzzle pieces, you try to trap people so they don't have any more ways to move.
It's like that what's the square, you just do it with a pen and paper where you do the dots
game where you're kind of like that. But real life. Guess who wins?
Rudy, that's pretty shocking. Well, not shocking. I thought it was really cool because I don't know that it's so fascinating that you can have an amazing game for the challenges, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. And I think that's one of the things that I really I got into the challenges. Some were very simplistic and some were very clever. And I was really watching to see who was making the right choices. And you could see, like, if you'd stayed on the outside of the challenge, you would have done a lot better.
And Jenna was on the sidelines, like, coaching Rudy. Like, Rudy, do this. Rudy, do this.
Can you do that? I guess you can.
I mean, they let her.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
Another thing about Rudy. So they get back to camp after the immunity challenge, and Rich and Rudy are chatting about Kelly becoming friends with Colleen and Jenna. And they're, like, worried about it. And Rudy goes, well, you know, they're all wearing the same bandana and wearing their tops the same way. I don't know if it's lesbianism or something, but...
He's the king of bluntness. He just like blurts.
Just because girls are dressing the same with bandanas and their buffs as shirts. He goes, I don't know if it's lesbianism. But...
He says some great stuff in these episodes. It's you know, it's classic. You know, at some point you're like, God, can I repeat what he said? But it's a character and we're in a podcast. So don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even like offensive me repeating it. It's just like absurd. Like,
right.
Whatever. But during the early 2000s, obviously very different. Or actually,
well, that generation,
2000.
That's your grandpa's generation. I've never heard him say stuff like that. But
yeah, Rudy's just like outright like weird.
So, you know, so Rudy won immunity. He beat Sean at the end, but in the meantime, Sean's still convinced of this alphabet strategy, and he even says to Jenna, like, "You're next." And of course, Toggy's like, "Well, we're just going to piggyback on that." So
we're going to use his vote to our advantage.
Yeah, it's so bizarre to me that he's letting people know what his strategy was. Like, why would he?
Obviously, in the future seasons, no one does this ever.
Ever.
This is not real. Like, season 1 is just so different.
Right.
And then this is the first tribal council with a jury member ever. So Greg is there. He comes back and he sits and listens.
And sure enough, you know, they piggyback off Sean's vote and Jenna's voted out. So there's that episode.
I've been asking you every single time, Mom, who would you have voted off? Would you have gone with them and gotten Jenna piggybacked? I guess it depends if you're in the alliance or not.
Because I think that once you make an alliance, if you go outside of that, everything can crumble. And I think so even if Kelly was already thinking, you know, she didn't want to, she was definitely having second thoughts on all that. She was going back and forth a lot. I think that would, you know, I would have stuck with it. If I was on Toggy, yes, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
But although I like Jenna a lot.
I like Jenna a lot.
Yes.
I know you said earlier in an earlier episode that there was some art, or I think the first rewatch episode we did, you said there was an article about someone saying like, I just despise Jenna. I'm like, I think she's cool. I think she's funny. I like her character. Like, you know, how they portray her.
Well, it's an interesting thing that I've noticed with editing is that you hear this is just some YouTube, or I don't know, some podcast or some YouTube thing where people were talking about, and it's not them personally. I think they were talking about the characters, but yeah, some people have very strong feelings. But in the editing, you hear the castaways might say one thing, but they haven't necessarily shown us in editing. And I see that a lot with this in the beginning here, and only having a few cameras, which I'm sure they have, you know, 3 or 4 times as many cameras now where they can capture a lot more. The other thing I noticed, I have to say this, whenever you see reality TV now, you always see people, they're wearing mics. So you can always capture everything. There were no mics on these contestants now. So you had boom operators who were there holding up booms 24/7 or whenever.
I mean, sometimes people aren't wearing clothes. Where are you gonna attach those mics? To flabby skin?
Right.
I don't think so. Put it between your butt cheeks?
No.
To hold the battery up? I don't know.
So that's a feat in itself, just sound wise. Sound is a big issue. We know we're using it now. So episode 10, crack. Let's stay with the theme of Richard's butt. The crack.
Richard's butt crack
in the alliance.
This is the first time Sean says he regrets his alphabet strategy. He realizes that the Toggy Alliance used him. Quote unquote used
late
him.
to this to the
he
game.
he says he is in like a little interview and he says, I regret doing it that way. Like, it's my fault Jenna got voted out, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, duh.
Well, and but
Like
here's the thing.
they used him before. This wasn't the first time they used this, like used it. They used it on Greg.
It's,
Like,
imagine CG being the first person to discover fire. And you go, all of a sudden there's fire and you touch it and you go,
that's a good metaphor for it. Like the first people on Survivor, they're the ones figuring out like, whoa,
what does fire do? It melts
thing?
your skin off.
Do?
Right? The first time you know, who knows? But we could go. There's there's infinite lists of things that are first. And, the first time you don't even know the sound of dial-up internet, probably. Anyway, I digress. So she's like, what? What does that mean? Okay, so, people actually, when Jenna left, they were talking about, this is exactly what I was talking about. They were talking about Jenna kind of annoying them or something. And I just don't
get it.
They didn't show enough of that for me as an audience member to see that, was she really that bad? Anyway.
That's what we talked about with, I think she was like the third person voted out, Cindy or something. Mm-hmm. Everyone was like, we were trying to figure out why her
Gretchen
and Rudy,
or Stacy. Who's Cindy?
Stacy.
I was like, was there a Cindy?
I said Cindy.
Stacy. Okay.
It's like, we were like, did people find her annoying? Why are they voting her out? Like, they didn't show it.
Right.
They didn't show enough of Jenna being annoying to me, like to make me think she's annoying.
Okay, so here's what we were just talking about. In this episode, everyone realized that Kelly didn't vote for Jenna. So she's like, she just sealed her fate now, like, oh, she's just broken off. Now she's a target. So they feel betrayed, Toggy, and they start talking about replacing Kelly with Sean because he might be more valuable.
This is the beginning of them all wanting Kelly gone.
Right.
Except in this episode, Sue and Kelly, this is where they make their final two. They said, you and I'm taking you to the final. I'm taking you to the final. I trust you. I trust you. And then Sue turns around and goes to Rich and is like, Kelly wants to take me to the final too. So
they broke.
Kelly and Sue were both, playing each other a little bit, but that's how Survivors played. Mm-hmm. But Sue and Rich were like, Kelly's got to go. Like, she's not with us. She's got to go.
Right. Yeah, she tried to do a little damage control, but one of the things that going back was, Richard, I thought was very vengeful, but I guess it's part of the game where he says, you know what? When he said, remember when he said, I'm not going to catch any more fish until Colleen and Jervis are gone. Like, I'm going to smoke them out, make them hunt. And I think it's, that's a weapon keeping.
It is. We were talking about earlier, like, securing your place. Like, everyone has a role, and whether you're the comedic relief or you're the fisher or you cook the food or you get, you give yourself a role, and his role is getting food, and that is a vital survival thing. Right. So he's put himself in that role. He can, twist people with it if he needs to. I think you can see that he has no issue with that, being on I'm in the middle, or we're in the middle of watching Big Brother, and you can see there's people are like, I have no problem in these modern reality shows, no problem. Lying is the game. And they're here back in 23 years ago, they're still dealing with the ethics of trying to be a good person and not lie. And I don't know. I just think it's really fascinating because it's such a pure form of the game. And once again, we'll never see it that way. So the reward challenge. Well, before that, talking about pure, Jervis's baby is born while he's on the island, and they deliver him a little note with cigars. Everyone gets cigars celebrating Jervis's baby. I thought that was very cute.
Yeah. Have you ever had a cigar?
I forgot that happened.
Have you ever smoked a cigar?
I've not, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up around, Tony Scott and his cigars, so I know very well what they smell like, but I've never smoked a cigar, actually.
Well, we used to smoke cigars with Harry Humphrey, your godfather.
I'm aware of that as well.
Yeah. And in fact, I think Harry knew Rudy because they were SEALs together. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. No, it's a community of people. They all knew each other.
Interesting.
So the reward challenge is that they're on this maze of balance beams. Those are hard for me. I just so you know, I'm not a very I can't balance. When I was a kid, I could barely go down escalators, or when I went in the Grand Canyon, I need hiking sticks because I get like vertigo. Yeah, I remember my mom.
Mom, escalators are just stairs.
But some people get scared of them. When I was a kid, I was scared of them and the movement. So anyway, so that one I looked at that, I was like, I can't. Oh, and there's a reason I don't wear high heels anymore. I can.
Okay, moving on.
Anyway,
we're not here to talk about your balance.
So this is a balance challenge. It's a reward challenge. And of course, the first person the person to win it is Jervis. And he gets, is it just one slice of pizza?
One like XL slice of pizza.
And
one of the big ones, like a Costco slice of pizza, like a big boy.
And he shares with everybody.
Yep. Everyone gets a bite and he eats the second half of it. Which I thought was, again, very nice of him.
But okay, so then he gets to talk to his girlfriend. That's part of the reward. But then we go off and Rudy is so judgmental.
Another thing about Rudy.
It's not okay to have 4 children out of wedlock. They need a parent. I mean,
he calls it. He says, in my days, you get a girl pregnant, you ship her off somewhere. No one would know about it. You don't have a baby out of wedlock.
She gets taken out of town. It's like, what is it, Victorian era?
Literally, that's what it seems like. He's like, babies out of wedlock.
I just thought about this. The 4 agreements that you got the book for Christmas, and that's one of the biggest things in the book about judgment, that we're constantly judging everything on a daily basis.
I did notice that while her name's Carmela, while Jervis is on the phone with Carmela, it's like everyone is just talking about his relationship, and it's not all bad things. Like people are saying like, no, he's a good father, he's there for his kids, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, it's his life. Like none of you really,
right?
Your opinion doesn't matter. What he does with his life is his life, whether you're Rudy or like you're Jenna, and Jenna's like, no, he's a good father, he does this and that, and checking up on Carmela, blah, blah. I'm like, it was just, right. I don't know, maybe when you're on the island and you have nothing else to talk about, people will just grab on to any bit of information so they can entertain themselves.
Well, and that's what we've been discussing through this whole thing. Like from the first episode, we were discussing the fact that we are truly fascinated with other people's lives. And especially if it's anything other than what we consider normal or fitting into some kind of mold. And if it doesn't, then we look at it and judge it. And when we judge, basically when people are judging, we only judge things that we would judge in ourselves and our own, as people who have slightly different values and morals or beliefs. For some reason, I think a lot of people are intolerant of something that's different, which it would be very boring if everyone were the same in this world. So,
right.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah, we could talk about this topic for a long time.
Let's move on.
That is not, that would not be with the rewatch podcast, okay. That topic. So moving on to the reward challenge.
The immunity challenge.
Immunity.
Yes. So
immunity.
Whoops, I think I may have jumped forward. So
so it's literally just building a kindling big enough to burn through a rope. They just have to build a big fire. They have to grab the kindling, build the fire, go get the fire that's floating in the water, yes, and light her up.
And Richard won very easily. He seemed to be way out in front, and it was very quick. And then he did this like this like joyful little dance, and it was cute, but it was memorable. Put it that way.
Yeah. And then I thought that because Colleen and Jenna, they were talking about getting Rich out, and then they're trying to pull Kelly in. And it seemed to me before they were going to tribal council that Sean, Jervis, Kelly, and Colleen were going to get together and vote Rich out. Maybe I was like picking up on some things. That's what I thought. I mean, I already know how the show ends, so obviously that doesn't happen, but that's what they were intending to get Rich out before he won immunity. That was my perception.
They actually did try to do that. They just didn't have enough votes. Everybody.
But no, like Sean, Jervis, Colleen, and Kelly, if the 4 of them are together, then that's Sue, Rudy, and Rich on the outs.
Right. Okay. So
in this episode, I thought they were going to pull Sean and Kelly, and the 4 of them were going to work together and like take over. That's what it seemed.
They implied that, but ultimately Kelly we know that she's been struggling and having a battle, but she decides to vote with her alliance despite her urges to vote with the others.
But then I was so confused why, because it seemed like Sean was with Jervis and Colleen. Jervis and Colleen voted for Sean. They were like, Sean, it's time for you to go. And I'm like, I literally 5 minutes before in that episode, what it was insinuating was that they were working with him.
Yeah.
So I was very confused why they voted for Sean when he could have been a number on their side.
You mean Jervis?
No, Jervis and Colleen voted for Sean.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, this is where I get a little like, too many episodes in my head.
I don't understand why they voted for Sean when it seemed like he was going to potentially be a number for them, which he didn't end up being a number for them, but the editing made it seem like he would have been.
Yeah, and Sean he had wanted to vote for Jervis based on his alphabet strategy. So he jumped back.
Got skipped.
Yeah, he won immunity. Yeah, so he finally.
Jervis is voted off.
Jervis is voted off.
At this point, I'm not going to ask you who you would vote for because I think it's so obvious. It's just the alliance is picking people off.
Well, my strategy is at some point I'm like, big guys eat more. I mean, or I have a feeling if you were a man, a big guy on Survivor, I bet everyone kind of got equal food, but men require more calories. So,
well, that's what my strategy would be. The second the merge happens, you get rid of the big buff dudes who are winning immunity.
Yes.
Immediately.
Okay. So episode 11, Long Hard Days. So the Toggy Alliance is beginning to crumble. Just like my favorite cookies crumble. Because there's a pink donut this week.
There's butter cake right now, Mom.
Oh, Kentucky butter cake.
Go get Kentucky butter cake.
Adam's birthday. We get a free one.
So there's only 6 days left. People are starting to lose their marbles a little bit. Everyone's conspiring. Everyone's fighting. Everyone's going a little haywire.
And there's only one, technically,
non-alliance member.
Is Colleen. But Kelly and Colleen, it's so funny the way they're, and once again, this is what editing is showing us, that everyone's concerned that Kelly's being nice to Colleen. And it's like, why can't she talk to Colleen?
Yeah, why can't I be friends but also be in the alliance?
Right.
And this is when they say, well, we'll get there. So the reward challenge is trivia questions about the island. And the reward is you get to spend the night on a luxury yacht. You get to take a shower.
This is a great reward.
You get to sleep in a bed. You get to eat a nice dinner.
But okay, so Sean wins this award, which I thought, he was trivia about the island. But he kept talking. He kept saying, or what they showed us is that if I win, Kelly, you're coming with me. If I win, you're coming with me.
He said, like, Kelly, I owe you a dinner. I owe you a dinner.
And then when it comes down to it, there's something wishy-washy happened where he said, Kelly, and she's like, it's up to you, Sean, make your decision. Because I think everyone was being frustrated. I think people were frustrated with or at least Kelly must have been frustrated with his alphabet strategy or something. But she said, it's up to you. And he said,
yeah, because she's not going to say, you have to take me.
And so all of a sudden he goes, okay, fine, Rich. And because he was feeling like is Rich like this alpha dog in this whole thing, and he felt like he would ingratiate himself. I don't know why.
I don't know. He said his reasoning was that, I know Rich loves breakfast.
Yeah. And so that was kind of a surprise. And then he also said, I asked Kelly and she didn't answer. And because she didn't answer, I said, she didn't give me a definitive answer.
I agree with Kelly. I would have been a little pissed if someone's telling me all day, I'm going to pick you. I'm going to pick you. I'm going to pick you.
Yeah.
And then they don't. I would have been pissed too.
Yeah. There was something weird there. And I just, like I said, there's every once in a while in the editing here, I feel like I've missed out on something.
Missed some things.
There's like little holes in the storytelling. And because as we know, editing is a storytelling art.
Well, so also Sean's dad is on the boat. This is the first. So in every season of Survivor, they get a family visit when there's like 7 people left. It's a challenge and they bring out everyone's family members. It's this big episode, but this is the first family member to visit the island, and they don't do it the same like this anymore. But
Okay, so my question is, I mean, what a great, he's the captain and Sean gets to hang out with him and Rich gets to meet him and they have this great, definitely a great overnight. But then my question is, they didn't know who was going to win that trivia.
They had to have had everyone's family members there.
All the family members flew in
Yep.
for possible and stood by.
Yep.
Wow.
I assume so. I mean, maybe because it's only 6 days away from the end, they were like, okay, it's fine. Like they can stay and then they'll be here when the show's over.
Maybe. That's a good behind the scenes question.
To the end. That's why they were okay doing the family member thing, because it's only 6 more days.
If anybody knows, let us know. I'd like to know
Jeff
how that works out.
Probst, are you listening? Let us know.
So
I've actually been to Jeff Probst's house and watched an episode of Survivor with him. Can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet.
What?
Yeah.
What?
It was like,
Tell us.
I don't know how old I was, but it's season. Oh my God, I can't even remember. I know who wins. His name's Tony.
In high school?
But elementary school, I was dancing at Center Stage Dance, and my friend Emma Ashton, and her dad John Ducey is really good friends with Jeff Probst. So one night on a Wednesday after dance class, Emma and her dad took me to Jeff Probst's house, and we sat in his living room with him and I don't know, his wife or girlfriend at the time, and Emma and me sat in these big beanbag chairs, and Jeff Probst took us to his office and he opened up this big chest in his closet and gave us buffs from the season. I have it somewhere in your garage, Mom. Like the buffs.
I don't.
The head wraps they wear.
Oh, okay. So look at me.
Those are called buffs.
I did not know that.
You've watched a whole season of Survivor.
I'd not heard that term. Okay.
Buff.
Good to know. Good to know where Jeff my child was.
I bet if you go look through my stuff in your garage right now, Mom, you will find that buff.
Okay. I'll go look for it.
Okay. Can't believe I'm just remembering this.
That's
we're talking about Survivor season 1, and I've hung out with Jeff Probst and watched an episode at his house.
Awesome. Well, I did not know that. So good to know. You probably weren't that impressed because if you're in elementary school, you have other interests.
Oh my God, no. I was watching the show.
Oh, okay.
I loved it. I loved every second of it. I was beyond impressed. Every few minutes I was turning around looking at Jeff's face. I'm like, what happens? What happens? Because he obviously was there and knows who wins because it's being aired. Okay. But I don't know. It was great.
I love it.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing that. Sean brings his dad back to the camp to meet everybody, which was pretty amazing because they grilled him on current events, and Sue
he didn't know anything.
She was like, that guy don't know nothing.
Yep.
But he did show up with care packages for everybody from their loved ones. And that really helped their spirits, really lifted them up.
And you can see they have like crackers and candy. Oh. Also not a thing they do anymore. You don't get any of that stuff.
Okay.
There's no care packages. Like unless you win a challenge, you're not getting anything.
Okay. So the immunity challenge is very simple. Sometimes I could see how they were just 5 planks put together, like 2x4s on the end, and they just stand there and they remove
every
them
little bit,
one by one. And whoever stays on the longest wins. That's very simple. Rudy fell off first. And then Richard did the 99 bottles on the beer on the wall song. Very annoying. And he fell off.
He jumps off.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and on the beach, so, they're still there. Colleen and Kelly are,
the final two.
But they show us a shot of Richard saying, I think it's so interesting that Colleen's fighting to win when Kelly doesn't even know she's being voted off. And all I could think was, Kelly knows that she's going to get voted off if she doesn't win this immunity. So,
and I mean, Sue and Rich, it shows them talking on the beach saying like, okay, well, if Kelly wins, it's Colleen, right? Like, so they were all planning to get rid of Kelly that night. Yeah. And not spoiler, but Kelly wins immunity.
Right. And so she ends up being the last remaining person. Colleen is, the last person to get voted off. And so the first person, the pagonging, that word is now pagonging, right? It's used in other seasons. Yes, it is. The term pagonging is when you get rid of everyone in a tribe, the way it was done, like that.
I've never heard that.
No, I've seen it. I've heard it and read it multiple times now.
Well, I've watched all the seasons and they don't say that.
Well, because it never
So,
happens anymore, but they call it being pagonged.
okay.
But when Colleen when she left, she was like her face. I like to watch everyone's face, and her face was very like, okay, bye. It was really sweet, And I actually really
Yeah,
liked
she was
her.
like play nice.
It's like she's the girl I wanted to be friends with. I loved her little cute little haircut. I always wanted to have like a little pixie haircut like that. She was really sweet. So episode 12, Death of an Alliance, with only Tagi left. Who's vulnerable? I think for some reason Kelly and
Ellie and
Sean.
Sue get in a big fight. They blow up.
Well, I mean, it's like, Kelly doesn't trust Richard now, and Richard's of course conspiring to get Kelly off next. And Sean's like, God, I'm stuck with all these conniving people. Well, like, yeah, now the game is real, and he finally sees it because, you had this kind of honeymoon phase in the first week or so, even though there's nothing, I wouldn't want to do a honeymoon like this. So Richard's now like, he's like, oh boy, they're fighting, but that's to my advantage, right? He knows that it's to their advantage. So,
Because they'd rather take each other out versus take Rich out.
yeah. So, the reward challenge. This was so odd to me, this challenge where
Mud,
they have to
it
put
looks like so much fun.
as much mud on themselves, carry it on their body, and dump it into a bucket. Now, Kelly had a good strategy. She put that, she piled it onto her hair and head. So Rudy, who has no hair, or Richard, they don't have a chance against her. She was able to squeeze it out like a bunch of conditioner.
That's what I would have done with this thick mop.
Yes, you do. You would have won easily.
Yep.
So this is the odd reward of a cold beer. Cold beer.
A beer at what is obviously not a real bar.
Right.
It is, they walk in and they just like built a fake bar and stuffed it with like.
Well, and yes, and I found out that they had to scramble for that because the beer, it was a product placement from Budweiser, and the beer wasn't enough. They were like, they complain behind the scenes.
Yeah, so it's Kelly wins, and she gets to sit at this bar with Jeff Probst and watch a sneak peek of the very, very first episode of Survivor ever. So it's already all edited and put together.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny because in the later seasons, like Jeff does not do that. Like at the barbecue, he hung out with them. Like at this, he's just sitting with Kelly having a beer. Like this is the only season that Jeff is like involved.
Well,
like
he becomes a megastar after this, right?
So in the later seasons, he does not just sit and have a beer with them.
Well, and I think according to him on his podcast in the story, he said we scrambled because, we needed to make the sponsorship, the Budweiser people happy. And the contestants didn't give a shit about a bottle of beer.
Of a single beer.
Of a single beer. No, they needed, So they had to scramble in that situation. So I love this immunity challenge because, Blair Witch had
Survivor Witch Project.
Right. That had only come out as a sensation, another sensation, cultural phenomenon, made for a few thousand, $10,000 or something. And went on to make millions and millions of dollars. And in fact, the director of that directed that episode of Fantasy Island. I did. Anyway.
Interesting.
But the best part about this is they have to find the questions and answer them on camera. Rudy.
He goes, he reads the question. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know that. And in fact, it's funny is I watched it and then I realized I went back and I don't think they didn't feature the actual information. So I didn't remember it. So
I knew all the answers. Jeff says, if you listen to me well enough, you know everything you need to win this challenge.
Right. So the thing that one that preempted it or told the tell is if your torch blew out. That's what was it. Okay. Those little things you have to pay attention to. And he was like, I don't know. And as that was happening, I just kept thinking he still has a chance, but he really doesn't ever win anything. He's just is surviving.
I don't know. So Kelly does win.
Third in a row.
She's now on a winning streak and she knows like reward challenge. Great. You don't really need to win, but she knows that if she doesn't win, she's going home.
At this point,
So she's pulling it out.
Right. No, to stay in the game, this is the only way she can possibly stay in the game, winning this challenge. Right. And so Sean, though, he's so funny. He's like, I'm still winning. He's got this confidence where he's like, I'm still going to win. But but Richard actually questions. He's like, I'm trying to decide who I vote for, Sean or Rudy, because I thought that was like, why are you still or is that something he was just saying for the cameras, because why would he?
Who knows?
But here's the thing. This is when you start getting to a point where you have to start thinking, it's not about the audience, but the jury members. And he's like, I know I probably ruffled. Yeah, who's going to vote for who when it comes down to it? Who's going to get voted out? Who's going to be kept? Because I understand the strategy of trying to figure out getting rid of Rudy or Sean at this point. Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, Sean is the one voted out.
Yes.
And now we are at the finale.
Right. This is where I made some kind of note that Richard had claimed it's somewhere in here that the producers were giving Sue and Kelly food. He said he caught them. And
I wonder.
But he used the word cheat. He said, I caught them. The producers were in on it. And they cheated, but hopefully, and I thought, that's so weird. I never saw anywhere else in the research or Google anybody else talking about this. So I don't
know, not to throw shade, but he might have some beef with CBS. So maybe he's, making things up.
Who knows?
Because someone didn't manage their winnings well. Sorry, well, spoiler alert.
But I always say there's three sides to the story: his side, her side, and the truth.
And the truth. Yeah. Okay, well, we're at the finale, and the first alliance to ever exist has officially made it all the way to the end. It is the final four, and it's planned.
But they're not intact as an alliance. It was only by the pure will that Kelly has been winning all these immunities, and she's there. So it's Sue.
But they did still make it to the end.
Yeah, Sue, Kelly, Rudy, and Rich. And now at this point, they're kind of, they're talking about how much their bodies have changed. I do remember, it was big news and headlines how much weight Richard had lost. And but now I look at it and I realize it didn't seem like that much, but you just don't notice it when you're watching episode to episode.
I wasn't paying attention to that. The only person in this season who I was like, wow, they've lost weight was Dirk.
Yeah.
Because he started
skinny. Yeah. He
started skinny, but then you started seeing his bones. You're like, oh,
yeah,
that's not great.
And Kelly is truly, she's feeling like the odd person out because she did not vote for the alliance at every single moment. And she said, I realize now, and this is just a great lesson for life, that sometimes you only have yourself. And she realizes that I'm on my own. And it's okay to be alone and use whatever tool, whatever bit of strength you have to get through this, because it doesn't really, when all is said and done, you need to take care of yourself. So interesting there.
So there's no reward challenge in this. They go straight to tribal council, and
there's an immunity challenge, right?
Yes, straight to immunity, but they're at tribal council and they have to answer questions about the people who have been voted out to see how well they know them.
And once again, if you've listened or paid attention or gotten to know
or been a real person trying to make real connections, then you should be fine.
So I think that's truly fascinating. This is a challenge that shows and exposes who each contestant is, because I was shocked at who could answer what. I thought it was really interesting.
So Kelly wins
because she knew Rudy's wife's name.
She knew Jenna's children's middle names
and Gretchen's last name. Or no, Sonia's last name.
Sonia's last name. She knew all these tiny, tiny, tiny little details.
That tells you, and here's the other thing. There's something to be said for listening is a superpower. It's something I'm trying to work on. you can do, because I should be doing really well in a podcast listening, because it's trust me, when I started doing this, I didn't listen that well. So I'm trying really hard, honey. But she listens to people and retains that because she truly is an empathetic
cares
person.
about them.
Right. And Rich didn't have any knowledge of that stuff and admittedly said, I purposely chose not to be emotionally involved in each person, which says so much because he was able to play the game like that. But you literally saw Kelly at one point put her head in her hands because she is invested in the human beings around her.
Right.
So that was my observation. So,
but so she wins. You can tell the other three are like, shit, we wanted her to go. So then they go immediately into voting, and there's 2 votes for Sue and 2 votes for Rich, girls versus the guys. Mm-hmm. And they do a revote where it's just Rudy and Kelly voting for Sue or Rich, and Kelly changes her vote to Sue.
Jeff literally says they don't need to vote. You need to vote. And
that's how they do ties.
Yeah, and so it just comes down to her. And so in her mind, when you're trying to figure out who you want to keep around, it's such a bizarre, like, how do you know? It's like,
I think she made, ultimately, whatever, but I think she made the right choice because earlier in this episode, Sue says in like a little interview, she says, if I win the final one, I'm taking Rich because I can beat him. So Kelly needed to get rid of Sue. Sue wasn't going to take her to the final.
Right.
So it's like, what choice did she have? She knew Sue wasn't going to take her. Maybe Rich would take her. Who knows? No one's going to vote out. Rudy's not a part of this equation anymore. So Sue is her best option.
When Sue left too, it's her face as they snuff out her torch. The tribe has spoken.
She's a sore loser.
She went, yeah. Okay. Like, there's just shock on her face and kind of that fake smile of, yeah, see ya. Bye, guys. Some of the faces are just priceless, So The next thing you know, it's 4 a.m. and Jeff is waking them up on day 38 and they have to take this long boat ride and go through some, tribal ritual, walking through the palm fronds. And the next thing you know, they're standing on some logs, touching a post, and the simple last task.
Well, so the big hike is visiting their old tribe members who have been eliminated. It's, it's memorializing. Remembering the tribe members who have been voted out. And they go straight to the final immunity challenge.
They hold on to the immunity idol while they're standing on a log. That's what it is. And the person who lasts the longest would win. Now, this is 51 million people watching this. They had no idea when they were shooting that this many people were going to watch. And an hour or two go by, and Richard shocks the world and steps off and announces, and he says, I guess that's with confidence, that he's like, I'm going anyway. And I know I have the vote with Rudy. It's very smart, I guess. Regardless of who wins, I'm going. But he doesn't know that.
He gets down and he goes, it's 50-50. And I know I'm not going to outlast Kelly. So it's 50-50 if I go or not.
And is it only 50-50?
He says 50-50 because he doesn't know for sure Kelly would take him.
Right. That's true. That is true.
He says it's 50-50. He doesn't know he's going.
Okay. I stand corrected. I'm sorry. I said the incorrect thing.
How dare you? Be incorrect.
Right. So it's so at this point though, now they're going to make it because it goes on forever. I mean, I wonder
6 hours or something.
I just wonder if the producers are like, oh God, this could take forever, or they knew it could take forever. Or who knows? I mean, have they had any water? Do they get to go to the bathroom? Like, what? Like, 4 hours? Who knows? There's all kinds of questions. And also, they decided to put mud on themselves, not knowing that they were going to have to stand there with that mud on them this whole time. It's probably kind of itchy and everything. So, of course, as they're switching around the idol, Rudy, it looked like on purpose to me, but
I think he's just old and made a mistake.
He made a mistake and lifted his hand.
Accidentally, barely lifts his hand. So Kelly wins final immunity.
Yeah.
It's her 5th win in a row.
Wow. And she won. Yeah.
She's one of the record holders, I believe. Or maybe the record is now 6.
Really?
I think it might be 5. I think she's a record holder. I could be wrong.
There you go. So she wins, and they go back to the
Tribal Council.
And this is where it's interesting, because that's where it literally, they're going to vote for each other. So that's where Jeff says, you guys don't vote. It's just up to Kelly.
Just Kelly.
Yeah. And this is where she's thinking in her head, she must assume that the jury likes Rudy or something, or dislikes.
I don't think she thinks, that's what I was going to say. I don't think she thinks the jury likes Rudy. I think she thinks they dislike
Richard more. Okay. So there you go. She votes Rudy out, and she keeps Richard. So now they're at the final tribal council, and everybody gets to say things and ask questions. Right. And
it's the jury's turn to decide who wins. As Jeff says, the power shifts to the jury.
Right.
You are not voting for who you would like to kick off tonight. You are voting for a winner.
Right. Good point.
I know Jeff's lines by heart. I've watched the show in quite a few seasons of this show.
Jervis asks a question. He asks 2 or 3 things that they would change about their time. Richard said trusting people so easily. Kelly said making an alliance. Jenna asked who they would put in the final 2 and why. Richard said Rudy and Greg. Kelly said Sonia and Gretchen. These are just like things I feel like to fill the time. I don't know if it influences their choices.
I think the only 2 very, very important questions asked are Greg and Sue's.
Well, yeah, one makes a speech and the other just says, okay, so Greg says,
pick a number between 1 and 10. And he has a number in his head. He says, whoever's number is closest, that's who I'm voting for. So they pick numbers, and that's what he decides his vote on.
I have a feeling that was Greg's. He's funny, because I bet he didn't even have a number in his head. He just said it, knowing who he was going to pick.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I don't know. But also knowing Greg, he totally could have had a real number in his head.
Possibly.
At the reunion, he reveals what that number was, but you could be right. Or maybe he actually did have a number.
Right.
He's the wild card.
Yes. We have a guest coming up that we'll have to ask that question too. And then Sue makes this very famous speech, because I'd read about this famous speech. And then when I actually saw it, it was not a good look. It wasn't a good look. And then so
it's sore loser behavior.
When she says, although I could, it just sounded like it was well rehearsed.
Yeah. So for those of you who have not seen it, Sue is obviously salty and upset that Kelly got rid of her, and just is so upset with Kelly. And she says, here on the island, we have 2 things, snakes and rats. And Richard is the snake and Kelly is the rat. And I think we should let Mother Nature take its course and let the snake eat the rat. And then she says, like, if Kelly was dying of thirst, I wouldn't give her water.
If you were in a ditch or something, I wouldn't bring you a glass of water.
And she said, loser behavior.
And she said something about, I'll shake your hand, but I won't. But I will never, what did she say? Something about, I never want to be associated with you for the rest of my life. And then, which was, and Kelly just took it, but it just seemed a little bit like it wasn't a good look. So when they go to vote, which is now they actually show everyone voting, which I loved. But Jervis was like, that wasn't a good look on Sue.
Jervis goes on a rant.
Yeah, he goes on a rant. So we end
defending Kelly and saying, Sue, you're a sore loser. Like, Kelly, I hope you win. You did great. Blah, 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 blah. Like, good for Jervis. I think Jervis's speech was iconic as well in its own way. Obviously, it's not as remembered, but he defended Kelly so strongly.
Right.
And I agree with him.
So the votes are tallied, and as we all know, Richard
Hatch
wins. And Instantly,
by one.
instantly everyone comes over to Kelly. And of course, I'm looking, my eyes are glued on Sue. And famously, now I know this, she tries to go to Kelly, and Kelly says, no, I want nothing to do with you. And, you know, so I can only imagine.
Why would Kelly want to shake her hand?
Well, why did she walk up to her? Anyway,
yeah, Sue just said, like, I will shake your hand, but if you're dying, I'm not giving you water.
Yes.
Like, no. Girl, I wouldn't want to be Sue's friend either. Nope. I'd be a little upset. So Rich wins.
And it may have seemed like a good thing, but I think a lot of people who know his story, I guess there could be an argument for, or he himself said, because CG, he has a YouTube channel. I watched a little bit of it, but he said that his whole life was kind of messed up because of this show. So,
well, I said I thought it was ironic. In this last episode, they show him saying like, wow, I really hope I don't waste this $1 million. And then I don't really know if we should talk about it. That's not what this is about. But obviously he didn't handle his money well and some bad things happened. And so I just thought it was sadly ironic that he says that when he does win the money.
Yes, I don't know all the ins and outs, but we know the headlines. So everyone's on their journey, trying to figure it out. But he's still talking about it to this day.
Yeah. So that was it.
That was it.
One of Survivor.
Thank you all so much for listening. Listen, next week we have
big news.
We have a very special guest, and in fact, we can let you know because I think we're going to give you a little tease right now, right after this. Our special guest is Kelly Wigglesworth. So please check it out next week. And also please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you like to watch it, check it out on YouTube. You know, you can follow CG on Instagram
and TikTok at CGMIR. You can follow my mother on Instagram and TikTok at the Melinda Clark. I said TikTok, not TikTok.
TikTok. That should be TikTok.
And then remember to follow Bye Bitches Podcast on Instagram. And
also, please go over to our Patreon. Your support helps us continue to do this as we dive into reality. And we're also watching Big Brother over on Patreon.
Yes. If you are on Patreon, we will be watching the Thursday evening evictions live from now on. So you get exclusive access to hop on Zoom or Discord
with us. We're doing live.
Yeah, we're going to do it live. You can chat with us as it's going on. I've been trying to get my mom to watch Big Brother forever. So this podcast is forcing her to do it.
Right.
But yes, guys, here's this sneak peek with Kelly Wigglesworth.
Enjoy. Bye, bitches. Welcome to the Bye Bitches podcast. Today we are discussing the finale of season 1, Survivor Borneo. And with us today is a very special guest, runner-up Kelly Wigglesworth. Kelly's not only a OG Survivor castaway, but also a professional Class 5 river guide. We've got some connections there. Humanitarian, TV host, producer, writer, and a mom working hard to make the world a kinder place. And I love that. As a member of the very first alliance on Survivor, Kelly played a fascinating game. And 23 years later, we're still talking about it today. And welcome, Kelly. Thank you
so much. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, thank you. We were just reflecting. So CG, my daughter, when this came out, I was breastfeeding. She's 23. She's the same age you were when you were on the show. Yeah. And this is one of her favorite shows. I got to say, I'm kind of late to the party now. I remember when it came out, but you know, as a mom, how old is your son now?
He's 9.
9. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I was literally in the middle of breastfeeding, and I remember the hoopla around the show and everything, but I didn't ever watch it in detail, or I did watch some of it. And I think it's just so fun to go back and watch this in the purest form. The show, it was never played again the same. But before we get into too much of Survivor, I just wanted to catch up with you, because I'm sure my first thought was, as we were doing this, I thought, I wonder if she ever gets tired of talking about Survivor. Not in a bad way, but just like, there's so many other things that you do in your life currently. in the last 23 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, to answer your question, no, and yes. I mean, I don't get tired of talking about it, but it's not something I talk about every day. Like, I don't walk around like, hey, by the way, I have, I was on Survivor. I have lots of leather bound books and, I'm kind of a big deal kind of thing. So I only talk about it when people ask me. And when people ask me I've never had anybody be rude or, a jerk about it. So people who ask are fans and they want to know and they're interested. And I'm happy to talk about it. So, ask away any questions you want to know. I'm more than happy to talk about it. But at the same time, it is really funny. Like, it's been 23 years,
23.
Yeah.
I'm the same age as Survivor. So.
Yeah. And so I was actually 22 when I did it. And then I turned 23 the summer of before the finale. And, like you said, it was the first one. It was super new. It was wild. It was weird. It had never been done before. And it's never been the same since, and I always wondered, I'm like, how is that still, it just seems like a one-shot thing. Like, you can't ever, like, everybody knows, the curtain's been pulled, you see who Oz is, and it's done. So it just always kind of amazes me that they're still able to, to keep it going. And obviously you were a bit busy as a mom during that time to pay too much attention. But yeah, I'm like, wow, people still talk about it. People are still into it. And I think there was a big sort of resurge of that first one during and post COVID. I got a lot of people reaching out to me. And I think in their own way, people could kind of relate a little bit, going through their own sort of COVID experience, being isolated or maybe being stuck with people they didn't want to be stuck with, kind of thing. So yeah, I did notice a big, sort of jump in like that season 1, after COVID. So everyone's like on their own little island.